Hello, fellow readers and booktubers. About a week ago, I posted my Roman Emperor reading challenge, and today I'd like to add a little something to that because this challenge was more challenging than I intended it to be. It's a fairly complex topic. The idea is that you would read a biography of each Roman emperor in chronological order. The problem with this, that I made clear in the first post, is that the succession of Roman emperors is sometimes not very clear. The Romans didn't have a mechanism to allow for the smooth transference of power. So sometimes if an emperor was unexpectedly assassinated or killed in battle, or if his family bloodline had dried up and a dynasty came to an end, he would have various generals marching on the city, different generals out in the hinterland whose legions would declare him to be the next emperor. And there were times when the Romans themselves didn't know who the true emperor was. So it gets very, very confusing, especially after the 2nd century. And so I kind of left this open. It is open. I mean, you can accept this challenge and approach it in any way you want to. I've decided to just talk about the Roman emperors in the first 2 centuries because the line of succession there is relatively clear, and you're much more likely to get biographies of those emperors because later on there are emperors that only reigned for a very short time and they, quite frankly, don't have biographies. Sometimes we only know a name. So I decided to set the parameters at the first 2 centuries. Now, if you want to take a different approach to this, and I mentioned this in the first post as well, you can maybe accept the challenge by doing the later Roman emperors or the Christian Roman emperors, or you could do the Byzantine emperors of a certain period, because the Byzantine emperors technically are an extension of the Roman Empire. They thought of themselves as Roman emperors. So anyway, there are all these different challenges about how to approach this. Excuse me. But I did want to include this postscript to the first posting and mention 2 things. First of all, I'm not going to take up the challenge until after the first of the year, which isn't that far in the future, about a month away. And the reason for this is when it comes to December, my reading habits take a very distinct track. And I know most of you have the same attitude about your December books. For me, December is the time for tying up loose ends. Finish the books that are still opened. Complete them. If I'm going to begin a fresh book in December, I want to make sure it's a book that I can reasonably be certain I will have done before New Year's Eve. I don't like to go into a new year with unfinished books or unfinished business or carrying baggage with me from the previous year. I don't know why I feel that way. I'd hate to think there's some superstition behind it. So when it comes to the Roman emperors, I'm doing the first 2 centuries, so I would begin with Augustus. Any good biography of Augustus, and there's a lot of them out there, is going to be at least 400 pages. In fact, I've already chosen which biography of Augustus that I'm going to use, the Emperor Augustus. 400 pages. Now, normally, I could cover 400 pages maybe in a week, certainly in 2 weeks. So if I started it now, I would certainly have it done before the end of December. However, I'm tying up all those other loose ends. There are a number of other books that I want to complete before the year ends. So with that in mind, my first post regarding the Roman Emperor reading challenge, which will be about the Emperor Augustus, you're not going to see that until maybe about the middle of January of 2025. So I don't want you to think that I've given up or forgotten about the challenge. It's just that I'm not going to take it up until I clear up all the mess from 2024, and so I can enter 2025 fresh. And one of the first books I'll read will be one of the books dealing with the Roman Emperor reading challenge. So there's that. The other thing I want to mention, and this is, there were a lot of comments when I posted the challenge, very positive comments, and many people seemed very enthusiastic about it. But one of the questions I got was, does reading a novel about a Roman emperor, does that count? Of course it counts, if that's what you want to do. I mean, there's no hard and fast rules for this. And as I said, you can approach this challenge any way you want to. And there have been some very good novelizations or fictional accounts of the Roman emperors. Let me mention a couple just that I pulled from my own library shelves. There's this one about Augustus. This was by John Williams, a wonderful novelization dealing with the life of Augustus. And I should mention, the John Williams who wrote this, the same guy who wrote The Stoner, which I regard as possibly the finest American novel ever written. Stoner, of course, has nothing to do with the Roman Empire. This takes place in the 1930s and 40s. So when Williams came out with this book, it was quite a shock to everyone. But it's really good. Williams absolutely did his research, and he did an excellent job with this. Another novelization of a Roman emperor that was published in the mid-1930s. It's actually two books. I got the fancy editions here. I, Claudius, and Claudius the God. You've probably heard of these. These were both by Robert Graves, who was a very prolific British writer. He wrote novels, he wrote historical fiction, he wrote histories, he wrote essays, he wrote his memoirs, he wrote literary criticism, but he also wrote these two books, and these two books were almost instant bestsellers. Years later, they were actually made into a TV series. This was back in the late 70s on BBC, a hit TV series. I remember seeing it. In fact, seeing that TV series based on Graves' two books interested me so much, fascinated me so much, I went out and read the two books, originally in paperback. I eventually found these nice hardback editions. And it was really Robert Graves' work in this that got me interested in the serious study of Roman history. So it had a tremendous influence on me. But Robert Graves knows what he's talking about. He had actually translated some of the ancient Roman writings. So he did his research and he knew what he was about, and he produced these two volumes, a wonderful novelization of the life of the Emperor Claudius. In when was this? 1951, Marguerite Yourcenar published her work, The Memoirs of Hadrian. Still a very popular book, and I was quite impressed with it. A novelization, a fictional account of the Emperor Hadrian, but she did her research. She knew what she was talking about. So if you want to do novelization, if you want to study the lives of the Roman emperors by way of novels, by all means, if you're more comfortable with that than the more serious academic work, please do. I would offer you two things, a caveat and a suggestion. The caveat, and by the way, the word caveat comes from the Latin. It means to warn someone or beware. Caveat emptor, buyer beware. I saw a sign not too long ago, caveat canis, beware of the dog. So my caveat when it comes to reading fictionalized accounts of the lives of the emperors is the same warning I would give to any kind of historical fiction. Before you embrace a particular novel based on an emperor, find out what you can about the author. You want to make sure the author has done his research. You want to make sure the author has done his or her due diligence, that they really know what they're talking about. See what critics have said about the books. You can always find biographies of authors. I hate to recommend Wikipedia for anything, but sometimes their biographies of authors are pretty good. Because you want an author that is not going to take too many liberties with the reality. Now, of course, you're writing a novel about a Roman emperor, someone who lived about 2,000 years ago, and our understanding of the past is not as thorough as you might think. Steve Donahue mentions this all the time. So there's huge gaps in our understanding of certain historical events, particularly the further back in time you go, the bigger the gaps become. Sometimes the motivations of the emperors or the people around them are kind of odd. We're not really sure who's thinking what. Now, a novelist, of course, has to fill that in. The novelist also has to further the narrative drive. So they kind of stretch things a bit. They might even make up stuff. But a good, sincere, and serious writer who's writing historical fiction won't go too far off the rails. And they'll keep it within the realm of believability, or they'll keep the conjecture within the realm of real historiography. And my experience with historical fiction has often been quite positive. The books I just mentioned here are very good in that respect. And there are many, many others too. So if you're going to read a novel, if that's your approach, that's fine. I mean, I'm not grading you on this. You can set the parameters any way you want to, but just take some care with that and make sure you've got a novel that's been well researched and that the novelist isn't taking too many liberties with the text. But it's going to be there. Even Robert Graves' I, Claudius, and Claudius the God, as wonderfully researched as they were, and as wonderful as they are in terms of drama and great entertainment, he does present a view of the Emperor Claudius that's a little too sympathetic. The actual historical documents regarding Claudius, he's not that nice of a guy. On the other hand, Graves does, portray Claudius in this very convincing manner. So that's my warning about historical fiction. My suggestion is, in terms of the Roman Emperor reading challenge, if you want to approach this by reading novels about the Roman emperors, that's fine. If you want to approach it by reading academic works or scholarly works about the emperors, that's what I'm going to do. That's fine too, but don't mix and match. In other words, don't read a novel about Claudius and then an academic work about the Emperor Nero. Things are going to get very confused for you very quickly. It's comparing apples and oranges. Choose either fictional accounts of the Roman emperors or serious academic works about the Roman emperors. Don't do one novel and one nonfiction type thing. You're just going to be viewing Roman history through a funhouse mirror, and that mirror will crack very soon. But that's just my suggestion. Again, I want to emphasize you can approach this any way you want to. So that's all I've got to say for you today. This is my postscript to the Roman Emperor's Reading Challenge. I'm not going to pick up the challenge until after the new year, which is only a month away, and I'm going to follow the scholarly works. You are free to approach this any way you want to. Oh, and by the way, I'm doing the first 200 years of the Common Era, beginning with the first Emperor Augustus, ending around the time of Septimius Severus. It's not going to be every month. I'm going to be posting other things on BookTube about other books that I've read or other things that I've observed about books, or other posts that talk about the joys of the life of a reader. So it's not going to be every month. So there might be a couple months might go by and you'll hear nothing, and then all of a sudden, oh, now I've read a biography of Tiberius. Now I've read one of Caligula. Now I've read a biography of Trajan, that kind of a thing. And I think that's fair. Okay, I'm really looking forward to this challenge, but I can't dedicate all of my time to it. So anyway, that's all I've got for now. I hope to hear from you all soon, and you'll hear from me very soon. Keep reading, stay strong, and here's to the new year.